All right, folks, welcome into the latest edition of the Last Word on Sports Media podcast as we come your way the week before Christmas. And there's plenty of presents under the tree or stuffed in a stocking. I am merely the somewhat capable host, TJ Reeves. My co-host, hello to Mike Gill of the Mike Gill Show. The Sports Bash is his afternoon show on 97.3 ESPN Radio in Atlantic City, the greater Philadelphia market. Mike, always good to be with you. Since last you and I talked, I have been all the way out to Los Angeles with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers radio broadcast and back. Very profitable Sunday. Great win for the Bucs. Spent some time in La La Land around UCLA. We were staying right by the UCLA campus. Got to be outside of Pauley Pavilion and all of that. Just a lot of history, obviously, in that whole town, but in that area. Had a lot of fun with that. How are you doing as we come in here with another week? College football playoff history with the expansion about to be made, the NFL winding down, a lot to get to and go over. How are you?
Yeah, we're doing good. Last week on the pod, we talked about the media drama surrounding the Eagles. That went away. The Eagles beat the Steelers, so we had that
At
here
least
locally.
for a week. At least for a week, the drama's gone away with the Eagles. Right.
It seems that everybody's kumbayage, and they've moved on. They've won, 10 straight games. And everything's going good over there. Got a lot going on, though. We got college football playoffs, right? It's a historic Friday night for multiple reasons. We'll get into that. We'll tell you why. We got ratings stuff. We got a social media, sports media war. That should be fun to talk about.
A spat, a dust-up on Monday night involving a media member who's also a basketball coach, we'll get into that. Yep. And the premier NFL insider, Adam Schefter. How about that for a tease? They were going back and forth Monday night. The Monday night games, oh, my God, were not that interesting. So the back and forth social media spat, fracas, if you will, between Schefter and I'll even say the name, Doug Gottlieb, is good. Yeah. It's worthwhile for later on in the pod. As always, thank you for finding us. We're doing this here on social media. You're seeing us as well as YouTube. You see the video show of the Last Word on Sports Media podcast, usually out on Tuesdays into Wednesday. Now, we do need to say with next Tuesday being Christmas Eve, it'll probably be out a little earlier in the day, et cetera. And we also do the daily on this feed where we give you kind of the sports media news info and some brief takes Monday through Friday. That's going to be a little different next week with the Christmas Day holiday, et cetera. And then you're going to take some well-deserved vacation at the end of this year as well and at the beginning of next year. Am I right, Mike Gill?
Yeah, I'm off Monday the 23rd will be my last radio show of the year. I will be back for a couple of weeks, and then I will be in Thailand for 2 weeks in January. I am missing the Eagles' run to the Super Bowl potentially. I will miss the divisional round and the NFC Championship game should they reach that far. I didn't think that far in advance, but I will try to figure out a way. If anybody watching this podcast can tell me how I could watch the NFL playoffs in Thailand, let me know.
All right, we'll get on that. Again, for the podcast audience or the video audience, I think ESPN International might be your friend because they are so plugged into all the biggest sporting events internationally and work out the deals from the different leagues. I don't know. I don't know with the NFL playoff games and how that works. But you got to find a way to do that coming up. All right, as always, on the podcast outlet, if you're only hearing us, make sure you're following, subscribing, Apple, Spreaker, Spotify. This is the extended version of what we do Monday through Friday. More takes. Sometimes we have the guests on. We're going to have a year-end show, a guest roundtable, as we typically have done. Mike's going to be gone, but in your stead, we'll have a guest roundtable on the sports stories of the year. We did it for back this summer for the sports stories to the midpoint of the year. Last couple of years, we've done this on the feed, so I look forward to wrangling up some more sports media members to go over the stories of the year, and it's been another wild year. I mean, Turner's no longer going to have the NBA come next fall. That's all been sorted out this year, this expansion of the college football playoff that we're talking about, on and on with the different stories of the year and the sports media. So it's going to be a lot of fun with that. All right, let's get into it. Let's get into the NFL Sunday. Now, again, I was in Los Angeles working Buccaneers, LA Chargers at SoFi Stadium, so I did not get to see a lot. Full confession, pregame and also the early games, and obviously I'm working a late window game, 4:25 Eastern, 1:25 Pacific time. So, Mike, give me some insight on the Sunday in the NFL and also as it relates to Randy Moss his illness, him being away, the tributes that were pouring in? Go ahead, Mike.
Well, in terms of the NFL, I was here in the Philly market. We had a doubleheader 425. So you had the Eagles-Steelers up against CBS with Nance and Romo. I have not seen the ratings for those games out yet, but I'm interested to see who won the ratings war, Philly versus Pittsburgh or Detroit-Buffalo. Now, the Detroit-Buffalo game was a back and forth. It wasn't a competitively close game, but at the end, both teams in the 40s. I got the Brady game, and I will say Brady has gotten better. He's not a number one material, but he has gotten more comfortable and better. Burkhardt, does a good job of saying, hey, how does this relate to something that you have done? And, he does, say a little bit more. He's gotten better, but he's still, look, if he was on the fifth team on Fox, you wouldn't say, man, this guy deserves to be on the first team. No, he sounds more like the fifth guy on Fox, but
interesting.
He is better than he was back when we started this, season. The 1 o'clock window was really poor on Sunday, but those two 4 o'clock games. You talked about Randy Moss. This is an interesting story. Now, obviously, 2 weeks ago, we played the video. They wore the sunglasses, and he had said that he had a health problem. He was not on Sunday NFL Countdown this week. He had said he was going to leave the show. They opened the show by saying that they were with him, and they all kind of, came together. They did keep the You Got Moss segment going as well. That was something that they said that Randy wanted them to continue that. So they did do the You've Got Moss segment as well. And then it kind of brought up a story that is the kind of story that really nobody wants to be the one who breaks the story.
So we were talking about the secrecy around what is this, and the fear last week was he has some type of serious cancer situation, something going on. And I said to you at that time, not that I'm an expert on all things, but if you're not going to be forthcoming with what it is, you're going to lead people to speculate, and then somebody's going to end up coming up with what it is. So late last week, it was the father of Larry Fitzgerald, and I talked about this, again, a plug on the Daily on Monday. Larry Fitzgerald Sr. has been a well-known sports columnist and media personality in Minnesota, including when Randy Moss played in Minnesota back 25 years ago. Fitzgerald Sr. is the one that put it out there, wishing Randy well that it was liver cancer surgery. And I guess Moss's son went crazy, and then I guess Larry Fitzgerald Jr., the Hall of Fame caliber wide receiver, he got involved about his dad putting this out there. So, Mike, I've said my piece on it. Where do you come down on the news being spilled by a media member finding it out and putting it out there on social media in the instantaneous social media world that we now have?
Yeah, this is a tough one. Now I do know Larry Fitzgerald's father was a beat writer for the Minnesota Vikings. What is his current? Is he retired?
I don't know. I know he had been a columnist for a long time as well, writing about all kinds of Minneapolis and Minnesota sports. I honestly don't know. I'm not as well versed, but he is very well known there. And again, was covering the Vikings back when Moss was there with Chris Carter and Randall Cunningham and Dante Culpepper and all of that. He was covering them, has that relationship. And so, again, fundamentally, you're going to lead people to dig and find out what's truly going on. And especially if you're a public figure here who's announcing something, but not all of it, in the absence of an explanation, people are going to speculate and somebody's going to dig, and it got out there. Do you think it crossed the line, Mike, from a sports media standpoint, what Fitzgerald Sr. did, or do you believe, as I do, that it's part of his job to find out what's the truth and put it out there, even though he did it unintentionally?
That is where it is interesting here, because again, I'm not sure if he's an active reporter at this stage of his career, Larry Fitzgerald Sr. If he is an active reporter, I guess it's, if he has this information and he puts it out there. If he's just a guy who just happens to have this information, because the reason would be Moss's family was not happy about it. Mm-hmm. So they're probably saying, look, hey, this is not your job anymore. You know what I'm saying? It's not your job and is he active or retired? And that makes a big difference to me. If he's an active journalist, hey, he's got information, he's going to go with the story. if he's not an active journalist, the family saying, look, this isn't your job anymore to put that out there. We didn't ask you to put that out there. And, then the son got involved. It was kind of something that I feel like Randy himself wanted to kind of be the one who put this out there.
So I'm just double checking. I believe he is still active and writing in Minneapolis. And again, he's been a media personality. He did talk late last week and said he wanted no further part of the story other than he hopes Randy Moss gets a speedy recovery. Larry Fitzgerald Jr. has been very outspoken about this and about the whole privacy thing. But again, you obviously know where I stand. I come back to that you are a public figure and people are trying to find these things out when you're talking cryptically and won't say what it is. You have to expect as a public figure, eventually somebody's going to find out what it is. I agree
with that, yes.
And by the way, I bring up again that Adam Schefter is the number one insider in the NFL, the number one newsbreaker. You don't think Adam Schefter knew? Even if Randy Moss didn't tell him, you don't think he knew what was going on? And he wasn't going to be the one to break it, and ESPN wasn't going to be the one to break it, which is a fascinating dynamic when he's the ultimate insider. You would have been curious to know if Ian Rappaport or Jay Glazer had found it out. Would they have broken it on the NFL Network's coverage on Sunday, or Jay Glazer on Sunday on the NFL on Fox and the Fox NFL Sunday pregame show? If they had found it out, would they have broken it?
Just by the way it was handled by them, they didn't come out and, Randy said what he said. He didn't come right out and say it, and then he wasn't there the next week. They didn't say, hey, this is why Randy is leaving the show. They just kind of left it up there, I guess respecting his wishes that he wanted to be the one that did it. If Fitzgerald is not an active member of the media, I don't see any reason why he felt the need to put that out there.
Yeah, again, and it was to him kind of like a social media shout out, and he maybe didn't even realize the gravity. I don't think he
did it with bad intentions.
And the fact that nobody else had it yet on what it was. So
I don't think he did it with bad intentions. I just think that maybe he was a little overzealous with the information and thought that, hey, here's a public figure. What's wrong with him? I have the information. People are asking. Here you go.
And so what's interesting is Monday Night Football, already pre-planned on ABC, was in Minnesota for Minnesota and Chicago, and they did tributes all throughout the game. Chris Carter and Jake Reed, his teammates, carried Moss's jersey out to the pregame coin toss. Joe Buck had voiced over a video for Moss, which is interesting. Here's where you got to know your history, your background, and your details. Randy Moss had a feud with Joe Buck for years because Buck made comments, and they even showed one of the plays from the game where Moss and the Vikings won a huge game at Lambeau against the Packers, and Moss very famously went over to the goalpost and acted like he was taking his pants down to moon the Green Bay fans. And that was something that was known that the Green Bay fans would do that to the opposing team buses. So he was kind of mimicking them, mocking them. Well, Buck called that out immediately back in the early 2000s, and it created a bit of a firestorm of Moss basically hinting that it was racist that he was doing that. So it was just, I was eye-opening is the word I will use to me, that they had not only Joe Buck, as you would expect, doing the tribute, but they're playing a play from that game in the Green Bay game where the whole controversy started up with that. If you know your history of these things in the media and sports coverage and the NFL, that was just fascinating. I will just conclude by saying everybody wishes him well. Let's hope there's a recovery. This is a serious thing, liver cancer and liver cancer surgery. Let's hope that there's a speedy recovery. But what do you want to weigh in on the ESPN tribute on Monday night now as we do this on Tuesday?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, Moss is a very interesting media member, too. Not the most conventional media member, right? I mean, this is a guy that, as you mentioned, was a little controversial during his playing days. You would never picture him as in this role as the media guy who's jumped in here. But I thought seeing Chris Carter come out there with the jersey, by the way the Vikings handled it, I thought was pretty nice. Justin Jefferson, the player. But overall, yeah, I think they did a really nice job of, he's a teammate of theirs, and it's obvious that they respect what he does for them big time.
Yep, and when Jefferson scored, he put the we're showing this in the video, as he put the heart up and said, "That was for you, Randy Moss." In the quite a shout out and moment. While we're on the subject, can I just say I tweeted this out? Want your thought on this? So we were subjected to Cowboys Bengals last week. Both teams with losing records, or the Cowboys, right around 500, 5-6, whatever, 6-5. The Bengals are terrible. Now we come to a Monday night doubleheader that has the Bears in it, who have fired their coach in complete disarray. They're awful. You have the Raiders completely dysfunctional, who had lost 9 in a row. And then we look ahead to next week, and we've got the Saints who've already fired their coach, who are floundering and who are terrible. How have we not used the Monday night flex, at least on this doubleheader on one of the games, or that Saints game next week against the Packers? It's just bad. And those were very tough games to watch. Mike, a quick comment from you on that.
Well, I'll tell you, we do have a flex, by the way, that is coming for Sunday Night Football, which was Miami versus Cleveland. That is out. The Falcons and Commanders are going into that game. The problem is, I think the thing with the flex that a lot of people don't really understand, you have to make the decision so far in advance.
Yeah, it's like 28 days.
Yeah, well, for Thursday night, it's whatever, and then Monday night, there's a different set of days. Sunday night, there's a different set of days. But we also have to remember, we don't know, what games you're allowed to pull into that spot, because Fox and CBS can say, no, you're not taking that game from us. So while we always say, well, there's a better game on the schedule, that doesn't necessarily mean you're allowed to take
it was available to them. I understand that point, but I can't believe that 2 or 3 weeks ago, as bad as the Bears are, and I know it's the Chicago market, as bad as the Raiders are, that we couldn't have found a way to flex out of that game or not. And you're showing the TV audience that they've now instituted the flex for week 17, not this weekend, but next weekend, that the Dolphins, who are basically out of it in the AFC playoff picture, and the Browns, who are terrible, are coming off of national TV. And if I'm not mistaken, they flexed the Browns out of something else earlier, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, too, because they knew they were bad. And so maybe there's only so many times you can do it with the flexing of these different games.
By the way, a couple of weeks ago, this is where the conundrum comes in. People were complaining that a Buccaneers-Cowboys game is coming up on Sunday Night Football because the Cowboys have been so bad. They've actually played better. But 3 weeks ago, if you were to say, do you want to flex this game out now, Tampa and Dallas did not look like a great game. And I don't know that it's still a great game, but that's the problem. You have so many weeks in advance, you have to make that decision. And,
But here's what we know. The Cowboys draw 3 or 4 million extra eyeballs with the love or hate, no matter what, even if they're bad. So it was going to take a real nosedive for Dallas to be yanked out of it.
I think he was on a podcast with Jimmy Traina, I want to say, and basically said, we're never going to flex. And by the way, it's not the networks who flex. It is the league that has to flex. The network can recommend and say,
right.
We don't really think this game's going to draw well, but the league is the one that has to make the overall decision.
But you're with me that you could have easily flexed the Raiders, who aren't a draw at all, out of that second Monday night slot, put another game in there, and certainly the Saints next week, who've been bad now for 2 or 3 years, don't have Sean Payton anymore, have already fired their coach. You could flex that out as well, and could have done it a couple of weeks ago had you wanted to.
Yeah, but you also have the other problem of there's Saturday games coming up. You've got the Christmas Day games, so you have teams playing on Saturday and then again on Wednesday. So those teams are probably not available to be a part of a move.
It would have to be a Sunday game. It would have had to have been a Sunday game. True.
Yeah. So
good point on that. All right. So what do we want to move on to next? Shall we move on to the college football playoff making history as part of the expansion of the playoff from 4 teams to now 12 teams? The first round of games, the first 4 games, will now be played this weekend, including a pretty historic situation at South Bend for Notre Dame and Indiana to be playing on Friday night, Mike Gill.
Yeah, so this is going to be the first time a Notre Dame home game will not be on NBC since 1990. Sean McDonough is going to be on the call. He had said on a podcast, Jimmy Traina, by the way, hat tip to them, that he has called one game from Notre Dame Stadium when he was the play-by-player for Boston College Radio back in the day. So he's going to be there calling that game. First time since 1990 that someone else will call that game a home Notre Dame game. So that will be your Friday night crew for the first round of the game. That's on ESPN ABC.
So that's McDonough and Greg McElroy and crew on ESPN, ABC, and on ESPN Radio. They have ESPN Radio has the exclusivity all the way through the playoffs. That's Friday night. Then it gets interesting on Saturday. Follow up on that.
Mark Jones, Roddy Jones, Quint Kucinich is the sideline for TNT Max Penn State SMU. Now, keep in mind, these college football games, this is where college football, I think they could have played these games during the weeknights. And now you're going up against the NFL. You know, these teams have been sitting around forever. They couldn't have played this on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night. I mean, what are you thinking? Bygones. Dave Pasch, Dusty Dvorak, and Taylor McGregor is the 4 o'clock Clemson-Texas game. Well, guess what? You're right up against Baltimore and Pittsburgh. Good luck with that on TNT
on the
Max.
NFL.
Yes. And Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit, Holly Rowe get the night game, ABC, ESPN, Tennessee, Ohio State.
So that one is massive. And again, that one will go. We don't know at the time that we're doing this on the Last Word on Sports Media podcast, is Patrick Mahomes able to play in the Saturday night game, which is what Chiefs-Texans for that matchup. We don't know if he can play in that game, but if Mahomes, and Kansas City has to win, by the way, here at the end of the year for home field, the number 1 seed, etc. So is he going to be able to play? But that would be going up head-to-head against Ohio State and Tennessee if Mahomes is involved with the Chiefs. The Chiefs game is going head-to-head with them. You're putting the schedule up on the video board here for the video audience to see this. And again, we should point out that Turner did a multi-million dollar, like $100 million deal with ESPN to televise these games, even though it's not their announcers, they're not producing it. So you will hear those ESPN voices on TNT and on the Max streaming service, Mike Gill, for the SMU Penn State game and the Clemson Texas game. So that's going to be a little weird this weekend in this first expansion playoff to have that.
Correct me if I'm wrong. This is a result of the trade for inside the NBA. They picked up these assets to.
I think this is different. They paid for these. So ESPN is in charge of sub-leasing these games, and Turner won the bidding process to get these because they were maybe talking to a couple of other entities. Did Fox want them for their purposes? Turner won the bid on this. It's different than the trade that we talked about before for the NBA rights and trying to work everything out for the Inside the NBA show, because that's for regular season games.
Right, that's in the Big 12 games, correct.
Big 12 regular season football and basketball on this. But again, it's going to be kind of odd. And I wonder, do you think it's going to hurt the audience a little bit that it's not, it probably will. It's not on network TV. It's going to be on Turner on cable and on the Max app. I mean, I understand why Turner wants to do it, but the college football playoffs kind of acquiesce to this, let ESPN be in charge of it, and let them be in charge of sub-licensing it or leasing it. And that's what they've done to Turner for this weekend. How much do you think that affects the ratings, Mike Gill?
Oh, I think the ratings are going to be awful for these, to be honest with you.
Really?
Well, you're up against the NFL. I mean, come on. What are you doing?
For the Saturday afternoon ones, right?
Yeah,
right.
The Friday night game, I think, will do fine. It's Notre Dame. It's Friday night. It's in a window by itself. You're not up against anybody.
What's your guess on the Notre Dame Friday night rating? Do you think that's 6 million, 8 million? Might it be more because it's Notre Dame?
I was going to say, I think it can approach the 10 million mark with Notre Dame on a Friday night in the playoffs, the whole thing, ABC network television. So I think the ceiling for that probably around 10 in that range. I think,
but bearing in mind that Boise State a couple of weeks ago, Friday night clinching game with UNLV, that's not Notre Dame as a brand name. It got 3 million when we were talking about that previously. So that's kind of a barometer. And then Fox has regularly gotten like 2.5, 3 million for regular season games on Friday night in the Big Ten. I could easily see this being like 8 million audience. Amateur guess, 8 million audience, maybe more for Notre Dame and Indiana, which is a huge win. Friday night's a terrible TV night. That's a huge win.
Yeah, but it's gotten better with out of home. Friday night's getting better with the out of home, where people say, hey, let's go out and watch it someplace. So I think the Friday night game will do fine. I think that noon game and 4 are going to be terrible. I mean, you're on TNT. No one knows to go to TNT to watch college football, and you're up against the NFL. And it's not just NFL, let's just throw 2, mediocre games on. You got the Chiefs playing, in the one game against the Steelers.
But that's the night game. That's the night game. So the day game, that'll be interesting. That's going to go head-to-head with Texas and Clemson and probably squash it. I mean, frankly, it's going to probably have double the audience, if not triple the audience of a college football playoff winner-take-all situation. I wonder, with the game on ABC, If that Ohio State-Tennessee game, I'm not saying it's going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, but could that game still get like 8-10 million for ABC and ESPN, Ohio State and Tennessee with the Big Ten and the SEC brand names there? What do you think?
Hold on real quick. The Chiefs play the Texans. I believe that's
okay.
I believe that is an afternoon. I think it's the Saturday games. Is it?
We'll double check. One of them is in the afternoon and one of them is at night, I believe, for this week. So we'll double check on those. Yes,
I got it right here. No, it's
as a matter of fact.
No. It's
correct.
a 1 and a 4. I was going to say no. It's a 1 and a 4 on Saturday afternoon. So the Penn State game. The only thing with Penn State, Penn State does have some crossover fans with Steelers fans, I would imagine. So
right.
You at least get the Penn State game with the Steeler fans, and then they go Penn State to Pittsburgh and watch those two games. But you got Houston and Kansas City at 1 o'clock up against a college football playoff game on TNT. You got no shot.
In that scenario, the Chiefs-Texans game, which is on network TV on NBC, will easily have 15 million, if not 20 million. And the college game will be lucky to have 3 or 4 million. Maybe.
Right.
And it's my mistake that they weren't going 4 in the afternoon Eastern time and then prime time. So then the 4:30 afternoon game is Steelers-Ravens on Fox.
You had me all worried here because I'm programming the radio station. I said, wait a second, hold on. I know which games we're carrying, and we're carrying the late Ohio State game, Tennessee, because there's no NFL up against it.
Yep.
But, like, for instance, on the radio, I had to choose, am I going to go college football playoffs or am I going to go NFL? And quite frankly, we went NFL. I mean,
and you have a regional tie with the Steelers in the afternoon at 4:30 Eastern time against the Ravens.
Well,
because of the market that you're in, that's going to do much better than Texas against Clemson. Again, that game has some brand name, but that's not Notre Dame. It's not Ohio State. It's not Alabama. It's not the big at Georgia. It's not the biggest of the big names right now in college football.
Yeah, see, you can speak a little bit differently than it. We're an NFL area. You might be more college.
Right.
So for us, Penn State might have a draw for us, with the
Texas has a similar draw to Penn State in the state of Texas and in the Southwest and the Midwest, but they're not Alabama. They're not Ohio State. They're not USC. They're not Michigan. They're not Georgia, the biggest of the brand names. They're kind of on the Oregon. They're on the second rung of the brand name. So let's see what the ratings look like. So now revise this because I botched it. Ohio State, Tennessee is a standalone Saturday night ABC game. The highest rated game this year is 13 million, I believe. The 13 million audience, primetime, Georgia, Texas. Will this game rival that? Will this Ohio State, Tennessee game get 13 million, Mike Gill, on Saturday night?
I don't think so. It might. My only worry is you got me Friday night. You got me Saturday all day for a 1 and a 4. Do I have anything left in the tank at 8 o'clock for a Tennessee-Ohio State game that really brand names but no stars in this game? This isn't a great Ohio State team. They're coming off of a loss against Michigan. Tennessee, this isn't like T. Martin and Peyton Manning Tennessee here. So I think that's a big number with all the football all day.
So what's your guess? My guess is I think it can get to 10 million. You agree with that, or you think it's going to be less? I don't think it's anything less than that. Do you think maybe it's at least that, if not more?
Yeah, I'd go right in that range. I was going to say about 9.5 would be my number there.
Find out. We'll find out. And again, that's Big Ten, SEC, and there's such a love-hate for Ohio State in the Big Ten markets. They'll be watching in Detroit because they hate them. Minneapolis, Indianapolis, Milwaukee, on and on. The bigger markets. It'll be interesting to watch that for Saturday. All right, what else? We have to get to this Adam Schefter, Doug Gottlieb stuff. Do you want to do that now, or do you want to do something else?
Let me get a couple quick things on the ratings in the college football. One, TNT, right. By the way, they set their pregame coverage. It's going to be Champ Bailey, Takeo Spikes, Victor Cruz, and Adam Lefkoe doing kickoff live from Penn State. Not exactly the names you think of when you're thinking of college football, by the way. Lefkoe does a nice job on the NBA, but I'm imagining this is his first college football assignment. Champ Bailey, Georgia, Spikes, Auburn, Victor Cruz. I thought he went to Monmouth, to be honest with you. So I'm not even sure what the college football world, where the connection is there. I get it. They don't do college football, although they do have some games. Are these the guys they normally use for, what are they?
They haven't been doing, no, they haven't really been doing college games per se. So it's interesting what they have put together there, going kind of maybe for the younger crowd and some different people. And again, you probably will expect some of these voices starting next year on the Big 12 games, on the Big 12 package.
I do like the Bleacher Report college football pregame with Mike Golick and the Gojo guys. I think that's a nice, two familiar names that, Notre Dame people will recognize, but they have some national. Mike Golick, obviously, from Mike and Mike, so they have some there. So there's that. The other ratings thing, your thoughts on this? I don't know what you think about the NBA Cup. My assumption is no one cares about this thing.
You have been saying that, and we're about to find out how little they care because they're playing the championship game on Tuesday night as we do this pod, correct, as we release this?
They are, but they played the semifinals on Saturday night on a doubleheader afternoon and then at night. It went up against WWE Saturday night's main event. Now, this is a nostalgia show, and so we have, conflicting stuff here. Jimmy Traina put out a tweet that said Saturday night's main event beat the Rockets Thunder in the ratings. That ABC, which had the basketball, had 1.8 million viewers on linear, and NBC had 1.5 on linear. But if you included Peacock, Saturday night's main event had 2.3 million versus the basketball game of 1.89. Now, Austin Karp kind of debated that a little bit. He said he's hearing that the Thunder game was 19% better viewership than WWE. Now, I'm assuming he's not taking the streaming numbers there.
Right.
But either way you slice it, they cannot be happy with under 2 million viewers for this game. And on a Tuesday night, they're going to have this game tonight, actually, is the NBA Cup Finals. No Lakers like they had last year. It's Bucks and Thunder. I can't imagine anybody's watching this or cares.
How committed are they, and I don't know this, contractually? Are they going to keep doing the Cup no matter what, or can they opt out and hit the ejection handle and say, hey, we tried this as a novelty. We've done it for a couple of years. Where you're further confusing people is you're not playing it in a line, linear, because you have the Cup and then you take a break and then you play regular season games. And by the way, the NBA Cup results don't count on the season standings. As a matter of fact, it's its own thing as a one and done tournament. So I wonder if the novelty, if they didn't take a hit because the novelty's over with on this.
Okay, a couple things on that. One, this one game does not count for anything. Okay, just this one. All the other games do count
in the standings.
In the standings and for statistics.
Okay.
The championship game of the Cup does not. So
which is weird. Why would you count them all the way up until this point and then not count this game?
Well, because this game here gives each of these teams an 83rd game. So they do play one extra game if you make the championship game.
Interesting.
So someone can score 100 points in this game, and it is officially not an 100-point game. I saw somebody make that comment the other day.
NBA.
Yes.
God. Convoluted. What about the argument that if you started this Cup and ramped it and finished it on Christmas, or you maybe had the semifinals on Christmas and then the championship on another date right after it, a couple days later, do you think you were making that argument as well? Do you think that would help?
Nobody cares about this Cup, number one, but it would help a little bit. The whole month of December, it's so confusing. Some nights are Cup nights, other nights
exactly
aren't. Once the teams got eliminated, the Cup things went away. By the way, they're playing these Cup games on these hideous courts, and then they get to the finals, and guess what? The courts mysteriously went away. They went back to normal courts here. Nobody cares about this thing at all. It is a poorly constructed thing. Look, if you want to make this something, the whole month of December is Cup month, and do a schedule based on the month of December being Cup month. By the way, there's nothing different about the Cup. It's East versus West. If you want an NBA Cup champion, get a true champion. Mix up the pods, West teams, East teams, all together.
All right. So the bottom line is they're trying a novelty that's similar to the NCAA tournament and what everybody else wants, which is one game drama, one game at a time. You can knock somebody out or whatever. And clearly, if it's not even getting a couple of million people to watch, that's falling flat. And it is no secret, it is the truth, that NBA ratings the last couple of years are down over 40%. So they're trying some different things. Obviously, this one did not jump it to where you have 3.5 or 4 million people. What is realistic on a Tuesday night tonight for this Cup final with the matchup you gave, Milwaukee and Oklahoma City? Are they going to even have 2 million people watch it? Seriously, legitimately.
No.
So
I think that's the high water mark. Last year you had over 4 million because Lakers, first year of it, might have had a little bit of more. I can't imagine they approach that number at all. I'm like in the 2 million. To me, is the high water mark for this. Nobody cares. I tweeted out many times. Does anybody care about this? I mean, a poll question. I had like 96% no. I have not get any feedback.
And you're in an NBA area, and you think about areas in the South, areas in different places that are not major cities, from the far West, et cetera. They how much do they care? How much do they care in Billings, Montana? How much do they care in Birmingham, Alabama? Does it grab everybody?
Not to mention Oklahoma City. The NBA has done a terrible job marketing their best team. They were the number 1 seed in the West last year. They're the best team again this year. And the NBA, terrible job marketing them. And you got the Bucks. So you got 2 smaller markets matching up in the NBA Cup Finals in Vegas.
Okay, so let's conclude. And again, we'll have more on the ratings as the week goes on from the Sunday NFL. And we've given you some ratings thoughts, guesses as to what's going to be for later this week. Shall we get to the more interesting Monday night social media spat between Adam Schefter and now Green Bay, University of Wisconsin Green Bay basketball coach Doug Gottlieb, who is also maintaining his daily Fox Sports Radio afternoon show from 3 to 5 Eastern time, noon to 3, or 1 to whatever that is, noon to 2 Pacific time. His show is on each and every day. So Gottlieb was on his show on Monday, spouting about the NFL and about different things. And then the reports came out that Michael Vick is being interviewed and talked to for a college football job. First of all, Norfolk State in Norfolk, Virginia is talking to him, but allegedly Sacramento State also was talking to him, and the president of Sacramento State then later verified on Monday night, yes, we had a conversation, but we won't be hiring Michael Vick. But then the Gottlieb-Schefter spat was over what does Sacramento State really have to offer Michael Vick or another coaching candidate. Mike Gill, pick it up. The video audience is seeing it on the screen, but for the pod audience, for the audio audience, tell them what the spat was over. Go ahead.
So Gottlieb comes over the top rope to Schefter and says, Jesus, Shefty, edit what agents tell you. 0.0% chance Sac State has $50 million in NIL.
Which, by the way, on the face, I would agree with that. There's no way that school has $50 million in their NIL. And then Schefter responded. Go ahead.
Schefter responds by saying, the Sac-12 leading schools' NIL efforts already announced it has reached its initial goal of raising $50 million in NIL funds to strengthen the school's case for an invitation to the Pac-12 or Mountain West Conference. And Jesus, Doug, a 7-game losing streak and last place in the Horizon League, less time on social media, more time in the gym.
Talk about, speaking of Saturday night's main event, talk about Macho Man Randy Savage, the late Macho Man, off the top rope with the elbow. He put him in his place. I don't know if Gottlieb ever answered that on Monday night. Wow.
I have looked around and saw a couple of people weighing in on this. One who said that he was a friend of the former coach at Sacramento State and basically said, look, I used to work with Adam Schefter. I hate to do this to you, but they don't even have $1 million in NIL. Now, I have seen other people suggest that Schefter might be accurate on this.
What the rub is, they're trying to build a new stadium. They have a commitment to facilities and the NIL, And it's unclear. Schefter's also pointing this out. It's, I guess, unclear on how much is specifically for the stadium, the facilities versus name, image, and likeness in college football. I agree with Gottlieb. I again say they don't have $50 million earmarked for NIL money at that little of a program. I mean, they may have it for the commitment to all the facilities and the stadium upgrade. I would buy that. But still, on the argument, let's get into the broader point here. I said while this was being done last April, when it was announced Doug Gottlieb is going to keep his national show, and I immediately said, I think you and I were talking about this back around the time. You mean he's going to do his show in the off season, right? He's not going to keep his show during the season. Yet that is the case where Gottlieb has continued to do his afternoon radio show and give his opinion and have reaction and be talk show guy and be combative while he's supposedly coaching a Division I team and giving that his full attention or his full effort. So,
I heard him on a podcast talk about his day, and it's pretty impressive how he does it and what he does.
Well, let me tell you what's not impressive. His team is terrible. He's got the leading scorer in the country who he benched a couple weeks ago, but his team's lost 7 games in a row. And if you're spending more than about 10 minutes on media, which is being interviewed in a day, that's 10 minutes more too many probably than getting your team better. So I understand that point from Schefter. He shouldn't. You and I have done this for a long time. We've talked about it. That's not a situation where you just do 2 hours. You're having to watch all kinds of different things, have a production meeting and talk about what you're going to talk about, find out who the guests are. That is several hours of commitment every day to be ready for that show. I
encourage people. I think he was on with Andrew Marchand. I believe that's where the podcast was. I mean, I listen to a lot of these podcasts. Everybody does a really good job, by the way, and I consume a lot of them because I get a lot of great insight and analysis on just the sports media. Gottlieb was very good on the podcast to explain his day, how he does it, his routines, all that stuff. So I would encourage people to go listen to it.
I'm just coming back at you, and I'm having fun. All of that's up in smoke when your team sucks. His team is terrible right now.
Well, how about him? But you just mentioned it. He benched his best player, and he said, I'm more about teaching that guy a lesson than allowing him to do
And that's
things.
great, and he's put the guy back in, but when I am a Green Bay basketball fan, how many of them are there? I don't know. We're not talking about the Green Bay Packers. We're not talking about the Wisconsin Badgers in football and basketball in college. We're talking about Green Bay's fighting for a toehold here. By the way, they've had a program in the past under Dick Bennett that made the NCAA tournament and pulled an upset. They also were in the NCAA tournament as recently as about 7 or 8 years ago, winning 4 games and 4 nights in the Horizon League tournament. It's not like they've never had any success. But if your team stinks while you're sitting on the radio daily, he's not doing it, I don't believe, on game day, but most days he's doing his radio show while his team stinks. I said when it happened, I said when the season started, I'm saying it right now again on the LWS Media Podcast to Mike Gill here in December. This is going to blow up, and it is already starting to blow up, including with the backlash from all this. You wanted to clarify one more thing for the pod audience, that there is a media member clarifying the whole Sacramento State Michael Vick interview. What do they have for NIL? Go ahead and say this for the pod audience. They can't see us.
Amanda Kristovich is from Front Office Sports. She is a sports business reporter for Front Office Sports. She tweeted out a couple of notes regarding the reports that Michael Vick is interviewing for the football coaching job at Sac State. One, as Adam Schefter correctly reported, there are currently active discussions, source tells FOS. How serious are they? Time will tell. 2, a group of local businesses and boosters have said publicly that they have secured $50 million in NIL funding commitments. No one ever said that they had the dollars in the bank yet, and neither did Schefter or anyone else who has been accurately reporting on the situation at Sac State. I believe the student newspaper wrote that the money would be contingent upon the school receiving a Pac-12 bid. And then she said 3, yes, the school was trying to jump to FBS level. They needed an invitation from a conference. Nothing there yet. So that is Amanda Kristovich from Front Office Sports, who has said they have secured $50 million in funding, but that they have not received it yet.
Right. Yes. So they say that they have that. And is the funding only going to NIL, or is the funding to upgrade their stadium and facilities? Because again, this is a small school, Sacramento, California, that's trying to be a player, wants to be in the Pac-12, wants to be in the Mountain West. And the president is the one that came out and said, I talked to Michael Vick. We will not be hiring Michael Vick. We had a very good conversation. We will not be hiring him. So that came out on Monday night as well with respect to that. All right. Anything else that we have not covered here on this edition of the pod, the penultimate edition before Christmas and before the new year is up, only a few more weeks here in this year. Anything else that we have not covered on the sports media landscape that you would like to touch on, Mike Gill? Or are we good?
Just the Heisman viewers, 2.5 million. It's the highest since Joe Burrow in 2019. It's up big from last year. Caleb Williams, 1.6 last year was the winner. And if you watch Caleb Williams play last night, I don't know why you would watch anything he's done again.
Well, a translation on this is Coach Prime, all the attention. Travis Hunter through social media, etc., has been a phenom. He was great on the football field, and that obviously translated into some audience. Now, keep it in perspective that the Heisman Trophy back in the early 2000s would regularly get, when there were fewer TV choices, no streaming, no Netflix, no YouTube, would regularly get 6-8 million people to watch in prime time. When this was an event on network TV, for a lot of years, it was a Saturday afternoon event, the awarding of the Heisman Trophy. It would easily get 8-10 million. Again, far fewer choices in the 1990s and the early 2000s on TV. So the fact that it only gets a couple million now tells you just how fragmented the TV audiences are. I thought he did a great job with his speech, Travis Hunter, as well.
Yep.
On that, and he's going to be a guaranteed top 10 NFL pick, if not top 5 NFL pick at the next level. And, fascinating how all of that came through for Colorado and Hunter going there. He's the Heisman winner for all time. Very famous.
His mom might have been the star of the show, too. She was very good.
Yeah, you love that with moms and the Heisman moms. All right, what do you want to close with here? The announcers this weekend?
Speaking of Michael Vick, by the way, he's a part of this Fox NFL kickoff at 11 a.m. They go to the Fox pregame show. Eagles, Commanders, big game there. Joe Davis, Greg Olsen. I'm very happy to hear that. I think that's my favorite non-prime time group. Joe Davis,
number one team. Yeah,
I think, that's their number 2 team, but it might be my number 1 team. Eagles, Commanders, I get Joe Davis and Greg Olsen, so I'm happy about that. Kenny Albert, Jonathan Vilma, Lions, Bears. Kevin Kugler, Darryl Johnson, Giants, Falcons. Oof on that one. Chris Myers, Mark Schlereth, Cardinals, Panthers. Vikings, Seahawks, Adam Amin, Mark Sanchez.
So Brady and Burkhardt are doing the Saturday game, the standalone game on Fox on that one. So, and again, it's a doubleheader up against the college football playoff, and that first Kansas City Texans game on NBC is going to squash that first college football playoff.
Yeah. So yes, I guess Brady and them are doing. Was that on that list?
I believe it was. I think so. Yes, Burkhardt and Brady.
Steelers and Ravens. Yes. Sorry, I missed that. Burkhardt and Brady are on that one over there. On the CBS side of things, let's give you the screen for the people watching real quick. We'll put that up on the screen.
CBS does not have one of the 2 Saturday games, so where are Nance and Romo coming up in this?
There you go. So you've got Harlan, Trent Green on Rams and Jets. You got Spiro and Adam Archuleta on Browns and Bengals. That game got flexed out, by the way. You got this is the next time they play got flexed out. Titans and Colts, McCarthy, Feely, Ross Tucker is in there as well. They got the 3-person booth there. Nance Romo, they are on Niners, Dolphins. Not a great matchup for them on CBS this week.
Pats, they don't have a lot on that whole slate. They don't have a lot to choose from, but go ahead, finish up.
Nope. Iron Eagle, Charles Davis on Bills and Pats. And then Jags and Raiders, Andrew Catalon, Tiki Barber, Jason McCourty on that.
Las Vegas.
Not a great CBS game.
About the only thing would have been the Rams-Jets game to utilize that early maybe for Nance and Romo, but that's Kevin Harlan and Trent Green. And by the way, did you know that today we're doing this podcast? It's 2 things. Shout out to my father and mother, Thomas Reeves Sr., and my mother, Diane Reeves. 57 years of marriage on December 17th. Shout out to them. Good gracious. Also today, December 17th, 2024, is the 40th anniversary of Eric Dickerson making history, becoming the NFL's all-time leading rusher in a 16-game season. He broke O.J. Simpson's record, which was a 14-game season with the Bills. Dickerson did it on December 17th, 1984, in a game with the Rams against the Houston Oilers. And for nostalgia's sake, Mike Gill, that is on YouTube. You can go watch the broadcast. It's there. Search it. Rams, Oilers, 84, Eric Dickerson. That's Len Berman and Gene Washington, the former player and the former vice president for the NFL. And it's not a bad listen because they get into it. The countdown is going on. Is Eric Dickerson going to break the record? He needed like 150 yards or something like that to break the record for the Rams in the final game, for them to also go to the playoffs. It's fun to go back. I've relived it. It's the 40th anniversary. Go back and live the nostalgia of Dickerson breaking the rushing record on December 17th, 1984 on NBC regional broadcast. The whole country didn't see it. It was it's an interesting thing to go back and relive if you want on YouTube. There's a free plug. It's there.
All right. Well,
are we good? Have we done all the damage we can do?
I think so. We got dailies for the rest of the week if we missed anything.
Yeah, and ratings that will be out from this weekend, and we look ahead to what's going to happen with the college football playoff in the NFL. Mike Gill, have a great rest of your week. We appreciate it as always. I'm merely TJ Reese. Follow or subscribe to the podcast feed on Apple, Spreaker, Spotify. Come find Mike's YouTube channel, Mike Gill Show. Find us on social media. He's at Mike Gill Show. I'm at Buck's Sideline Guy. You'll see the video version of this show. Go to lwos.com/podcast, lastwordonsports.com/podcast to find out more. For now, we are good on the Last Word on Sports Media podcast.